welcome to another edition of Baseball Weekend Journal. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. Paul Shabari will be back next weekend. This week, as we gear up for pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training, we continue to review some of the major transactions of last week. I reveal Paul's top National League prospects, Henry Mejia receives a lifetime ban, and I'll give you the results from the Caribbean Series and World Baseball Classic qualification tournament in Australia. All that and more on Baseball Weekend Journal for the week of February 14th, 2016. With little time left until all players report to spring training, the Hot Stove League starts winding down. There are many great players available, but some are tied down by the compensatory draft picks that would be sacrificed once they are signed. Their expected contracts also tie up some of the remaining players that don't carry as much expectation that still remain without a home. However, this week we saw some players finalize their plans for the forthcoming season. The Chicago White Sox have been rumored to be in the hunt of top free agent outfielders, and finally made a move this week. Though it wasn't an outfielder, they managed to improve their starting rotation with the addition of right-handed pitcher Matt Latos. The White Sox, who are stacked with left-handed talent in the rotation, automatically improved from the right-handed side of the mound with Latos. Their general manager Rick Hahn stated 2 weeks ago at the team's convention that the White Sox were not done making moves and proved it by adding Latos, who replaces departing righty Jeff Samardzija. The White Sox are still in hunt for a veteran shortstop and outfielder, but may not be able to provide the cash to pull the trigger on such moves. They are rumored to be courting Ian Desmond and Dexter Fowler, but the risk of losing the supplemental round draft pick given to them by the departure of Samardzija would jeopardize their chances of padding an already bare farm system. Desmond and Fowler, as well as Giovanni Gallardo, still remain unsigned, which is a testament to the flaws with the qualifying offers and how they affect new contracts for these types of free agents. The Baltimore Orioles keep getting named to the Fowler wish list. They're looking for another bat for their lineup and will either sign a free agent or trade to make that happen. Another rumor has them linked to Pedro Alvarez. Perhaps the biggest move of the week was the trade that sent power-hitting outfielder Chris Davis to the Oakland Athletics in exchange for prospect Jacob Nottingham and Bubby Derby. Davis had 20 home runs in the final 2 months of the season, coming off a knee surgery. He will make the A's batting order stronger with his power. Last year, the A's ranked 12th in the American League in home runs. Paul mentioned Jacob Nottingham as an Athletics prospect in last week's show for his power on offense. He plays catcher but could see a shift to a new position to protect his power stroke at the plate. With Jonathan Lucroy departing from the Milwaukee Brewers after, or maybe during 2016, a spot could open up for Nottingham to move through the ranks as a backup catcher, though he will still have to put in time in AA and AAA before that might happen. Last week, Paul gave you his thoughts on which American League prospects will have an impact for their ball clubs at the big league level in 2016. As he said before, these aren't necessarily the best prospects in the organization or the player who will make the biggest impact, but more of a who's who among some of the newer faces around Major League Baseball. This week, I give you Paul's pick for the National League. Mark Appel, the former number 1 overall pick in the 2013 draft, was traded to the Philadelphia Phillies in a trade that brought Ken Giles to the Houston Astros. The Phillies are in total rebuild mode coming off the turn of the decade, where they made 2 World Series appearances, winning 1 in 2008. They fired general manager Ruben Amaro Jr. and have rid themselves of aging veterans like Jimmy Rollins, Chase Utley, and Cole Hamels. They still have Ryan Howard, but cannot find a team to take him. Their farm system is rich with talent in anticipation of the next wave of success for the franchise. Heading up the list of prospects that we may see in the year are pitcher Appel, who won't be as great as his draft number would suggest, and Nick Williams, who came over in a deal that sent Hales to the Texas Rangers. Williams has impressive offensive numbers and speed on the base paths, but his glove still needs work. He may end in center field, but for now projects to be a corner outfielder in Philly. While the New York Mets boast future talent up the middle with Ahmad Rosario and Gavin Cecchini, those players will probably not see some time in New York for a couple of years. The Mets will see production from outfield prospect Brandon Nimmo, who jumped 3 levels in 2015. Nimmo can hit for power as evidenced by his batting practice, but still needs to display the skills during games. He has the ability to play center field as well as the corners. The Miami Marlins have many prospects who may be a year or 2 away from reaching the majors, but have a great defensive shortstop by the name of JT Riddle. Riddle still needs a strong offensive game to really compete, but makes up for it with great range. He will have to compete with second baseman prospect Avery Romero for a shot to play up the middle off the Marlins bench in 2016. The Washington Nationals already boast a solid starting rotation despite losing Jordan Zimmerman to the Detroit Tigers and Doug Fister to the Houston Astros. If injuries hit the Nats staff, expect the nation's top pitching prospect, Lucas Giolito, to step in. His fastball and curveball are both power pitches, which make up for his still developing changeup. Expect Giolito to make his big league debut this season after his Super 2 deadline passes. With projections of having multiple 200 strikeout seasons, the Nationals are going to want to hang on to him for a long time. The Atlanta Braves acquired Dansby Swanson during the winter meetings when they traded Shelby Miller to Arizona. Swanson was the number 1 overall pick in last summer's amateur draft. The Vanderbilt alum could get a chance to play shortstop in the big leagues this season because the Braves traded Andrelton Simmons to the Angels. Paul would not be surprised to see Swanson in the majors by season's end, as long as he gets the at-bats he needs in the minors to prove he belongs. The Chicago Cubs have propelled themselves into yearly contenders thanks in part to sound drafting. Last season saw the debut of multiple prospects who not only proved their worth at the major league level, but showed that they have all-star type stuff. This season, with a farm system that has been slightly depleted by last season's call-ups, they only have catchers Wilson Contreras and outfielder Albert Almora scheduled to get brought up to Chicago. Unfortunately for both, there's too much talent in the Cubs organization for them to fulfill a need at the moment. As for pitching goes, C.J. Edwards and Pierce Johnson are primed to make the jump to the majors, most likely out of the bullpen. Jameson Taillon missed 2014 after having Tommy John surgery. Last season, his rehab was stopped when he needed surgery to repair a hernia. He is back on track and will be ready to make his debut in 2016 if all goes well. If the Pittsburgh Pirates rotation experiences any injuries, he can make a spot start, but his recovery could call for him to have an innings limit, which may find him at home in the bullpen. The Milwaukee Brewers may be in the midst of a full rebuild. Catcher Jonathan Lucroy hinted at this a few weeks ago. The Brew Crew traded Chris Davis to Oakland on Friday, and Lucroy could be the next major star to leave. In return from the Davis trade, the Brewers received Jacob Nottingham from the Athletics. Last week, Paul mentioned Nottingham as an Oakland prospect destined to see some time at the major league level. While Paul doesn't see him coming up this season, he does see him as a key piece in the near future. The Brewers prospect that is getting a lot of attention is shortstop Orlando Arcia. Arcia is expected to make his major league debut this upcoming season. The Cardinals have always displayed a deep farm system in recent years. This year appears to be a little different, as they've already graduated many prospects into the big league. The one standout that may see time in 2016 is Alex Reyes. Reyes is a right-handed pitcher who features a fastball in the mid-90s and a strong curveball. Reyes will have to serve a 50-game suspension after testing positive for marijuana, violating the league's drug policy. The Cincinnati Reds are in need of pitching and have pitchers who should be ready to make the leap. Lefty Cody Reed and righty Robert Stevenson have major league ready stuff. Stevenson can hit in the high 90s on the radar gun, but hovers around 91 to 93 miles per hour. Reed has a mid-90s fastball that is tough for hitters to pick up. He struggles with the command of his slider, but manages to produce outs. He will need to develop his changeup in order to thrive at the major league level. The Los Angeles Dodgers have a deep farm system, and one of the top prospects in the league is shortstop Corey Seager. He's the younger brother of Seattle Mariners third baseman Kyle Seager, and scouts say Corey already is a more advanced hitter than Kyle. Corey made his major league debut at the end of last season and had 33 hits, including 4 home runs in 27 games. Right-handed pitcher Brandon Shipley hasn't spent any time beyond Double-A ball, but brings a solid mix of fastball, curveball, and changeup to the table. He might be able to help the Arizona Diamondbacks down the stretch this season if he can stay consistent in Double-A and Single-A ball. Otherwise, expect him to make the leap to the majors in 2017. The prospect for the San Francisco Giants most likely to see action in the Bay Area in 2016 is pitcher Kyle Crick. Crick has a fastball that tops out at 99 miles per hour and a cutter/sinker that averages in the 80s. He struggles with his command of the strike zone and may be destined for the bullpen, but could eventually be a starter. Hunter Renfroe put up great numbers in Double-A and Triple-A last year and now gets a shot to compete for a spot in the San Diego Padres outfield now that Justin Upton is gone. Renfroe led Mississippi State University to the College World Series in 2013 and has the ability to one day be a staple in the middle of the Padres batting order with expectations of 30 home run seasons. Right-handed pitcher John Gray made his major league debut last season with the Colorado Rockies. The third overall pick in 2013 draft struggled in 9 starts going 0-2, but the upside was that he had 40 strikeouts in 40 innings. He came out of college with a fastball that touched 100 miles an hour, but his velocity has since dropped. He will need to prove himself worthy of the 5th spot in the Rockies rotation this season, otherwise he may be better used as a setup or middle reliever. Henry Mejia of the New York Mets was banned for life from baseball on Friday by Major League Commissioner Rob Manfred after testing positive for Bolden-1, an anabolic steroid. This is Mejia's 3rd positive test for performance-enhancing drugs. He was the Mets closer in 2014 with 28 saves, and was slated to start last season in that role, but was suspended for 80 games after he was tested positive for stanozolol. Mejia plans on appealing the ban, but cannot apply for reinstatement until after 1 year, and cannot be reinstated until 2 years. Last week, the Caribbean Series wrapped up with Mexico defeating Venezuela in the championship game. In dramatic fashion, the game-winning run was scored on a solo home run by Mazatlan-designated hitter Jorge Vasquez. Vasquez had played the previous season for the Venezuelan runner Tigres de la Ruga. This is the third championship in 4 years for a Mexican League team in the Caribbean Series. The biggest story of the series was Cuban brothers Yulesky and Lourdes Correo defecting from Cuba, with the intentions of playing in the United States. Yulesky has long been looked at as a future Cuban star in the major leagues, though he is currently 31 years old. He wants to play for the Yankees, which probably will not happen since they are already set at second and third base, which is his position. He would have to establish residency in the U.S. for 1 year before he could play. Lourdes is only 22 years old and would be subject to international signing rules, limiting the amount of teams which he could sign with. Their oldest brother, Yunenski, plays in Japan's Nippon Professional Baseball. This week in Sydney, Australia, 4 countries competed to determine who will qualify for next year's World Baseball Classic. Teams from host country Australia, as well as New Zealand, South Africa, and the Philippines went toe-to-toe in a double elimination tournament format. The Philippines were eliminated in their only 2 games with losses to Australia and New Zealand. The Australian team so far has not lost and will play South Africa on Sunday in the final game. Unfortunately for Australia, the final game is not subject to the double elimination format, meaning if they lose their only game in the championship game, they would miss their bid for the 2017 World Baseball Classic and have to wait at least 4 more years to compete. Next month, 8 teams will compete in 2 qualifying tournaments, one in Mexico that will feature Mexico, Czech Republic, Germany, and Nicaragua, and one in Panama City that will feature Panama, Colombia, France, and Spain. The final qualifier will be in Brooklyn in September with Brazil, Great Britain, Israel, and Pakistan competing. And before wrapping up this week's show, some tidbits from Paul. Ozzie Guillen will make his return to managing next season as he will be at the helm of Los Tribunos del Aguario of the Venezuelan Professional Baseball League. Guillen is a Venezuelan native and managed the Chicago White Sox to a World Series championship in 2015. Minnesota Twins first baseman Joe Mauer revealed this week that he has experienced blurred vision after the concussion he suffered in 2013. Mauer intends to wear sunglasses to help correct the problem at the plate this year. During a radio interview this week, Bryce Harper was asked if he could become the league's first ever recipient of a $400 million contract when he becomes a free agent after the 2018 season. Harper replied tongue-in-cheek that, though he doesn't think about those things, that he is being sold short. With the amount of money that has been spent in the recent years on other players, Harper could be the guy that breaks the $400 million barrier. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Baseball Weekend, and email the show with your thoughts or questions at baseballwj@gmail.com. You can follow me at Twitter at Mercado2333, like my show at Outreach Radio Chicago on Facebook. For Paul Shivari, I'm Mike Mercado. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Baseball Weekend Journal.